of course,
Jeff Howe in my life.
Yes, you did.
Yes, sir.
You've been talking about him.
Sure.
So here's Jeff Howe on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Jeff, thank you for the time as always, my friend. The Aaron Rodgers stuff.
And I missed you too, so I just had to get that out.
The Aaron Rodgers stuff is just the drama that has no end. He is reportedly going to be on Pat McAfee's show tomorrow, Jeff. The Jets are making moves. They've reportedly brought in Alan Lazard. What is going on with Aaron Rodgers?
Does anybody know? I mean, really, like nobody. He's a very different type of person, and I think everybody has kind of seen that. Everybody's known that for a while now, but you've got a string of instances, or however you want to put it, a string of events that are leading up to this decision, which everybody is kind of assuming might come to a head tomorrow. Maybe he announces this whole thing and puts it to rest, but it's totally bizarre. And this is really the risk. I think when you see why the Packers are okay with allowing Rodgers to eventually go, and this is the risk that a new team like the Jets apparently would be taking on. And I mean, there are people around the league who are watching this just saying, you knew what you were signing up for, and it's already starting. So the Jets have to sincerely hope. I mean, they know that however long Rodgers ends up playing for them, assuming he does, they're probably going to go through this exercise every single off season, but they better hope that they get the winning to validate everything that comes with it.
Yeah, isn't he worth it, Jeff? That's what I keep going back to. Like, if he's the guy who won back-to-back MVPs after the last time he felt slighted by the Packers, isn't he worth it for all the headache and everything else that goes with it?
Yeah, I mean, if he plays at an MVP level, let's say he finishes in the top 5 in the MVP voting, he gets the Jets relevant again, they become one of the better teams in the AFC. I mean, they don't necessarily have to win a Super Bowl, but if he bridges the gap, I mean, let's even start small. If he bridges the gap and gets them to a point where they're comfortable to finally turn it over to Zach Wilson, whether it's a year or two from now, and he helps this young core, because they've had going on 3 really good draft classes in a row now. If he helps this young core start to learn how to win, there are ways that this type of move can be a victory for the Jets, even without the Super Bowl. But again, you're going through a lot of stuff, and I mean, you got to wonder. Like, I mean, I'm throwing stuff at the wall with something like this, but look at what Rodgers came into the league watching. It was Brett Favre. And it's all for like a decade. We're like, oh, there's no way Aaron Rodgers could watch Brett Favre do this and then do it again. I mean, hey, look what's happening. So how does this have any sort of impact on those younger guys? I mean, he's going to be an impactful presence in that locker room. So again, I mean, this does not come without some type of cost, whether we can see it or not.
Jeff Howe with us. Jeff, Lamar Jackson tweeted out 3 years, $133 million, and then mentioned, not having an agent, or, he needs an agent, with a bunch of emojis. If it is a 3-year, $133 million guaranteed offer, is that a fair offer? And where do you think things go from here?
That would be, so it's hard to say fair, because this is such a polarizing topic. And I tried to get clarity on what exactly that meant. Like everything with this storyline over the last 2 years, there's not a whole lot of clarity as to what this actually means. But let's work under the premise that it was 3 and 133, or I'm sorry, whatever those numbers were. And you look at the franchise year this year, the franchise year next year, and let's say it was something to do with the offer last year, including the 50-year option. Then you put all those numbers together, and yeah, that gets you to a little bit. I think the 133 would be a little bit more than back-to-back franchises plus the 50-year option. Now, if it's the offer that is most recently been on the table, then you kind of got to question what's going on here. But I mean, these are just such unique negotiations, because he doesn't have the agent, and there are complications from that. And I'm not, the type who's just going to stand on a box and just start ranting and raving about how you need an agent. But there are certain things that Lamar Jackson's missing here. And it's hard to have. Eric DeCosta even mentioned it at the Combine. But this is something that I wrote about, I think, last September. you can't have those hard negotiations at the table because you're talking directly to the player. The player's going to sit there and say, hey, I want Deshaun Watson money. And the team is going to say, you deserve to ask for the Deshaun Watson money, but here's why you're not worth it. Or here's why that contract is a unicorn and it's never going to be replicated, or it's not going to be anytime soon. So it's just hard. You got two teams, or two sides here. They've been negotiating for 2 years, and semantics or otherwise, people can talk about making progress. Progress to me at this point is going to be defined by whether or not you can get a deal done. So there has not been enough progress made.
You look at what's going on in Las Vegas right now, Jeff, and you swap out Derek Carr for Jimmy Garoppolo. Today, Jacoby Myers is signed while they trade Darren Waller. And on paper, you look at those two moves and you don't see upgrades. Is this more about fits with Josh McDaniels?
Yeah, there's part of that because you can make the obvious correlation to Garoppolo and McDaniels and their history together. I mean, Dave Ziegler was I'm pretty sure Dave Ziegler was there in 2014 when they drafted him. We know Josh was. Anyway, the fit, the understanding of the offense, the fact that Garoppolo should be able to come in right away and help lead that offense and kind of do it without as much resistance because he understands where McDaniels is coming from. He understands the concepts of this offense. Similarly with Jacoby Myers. Now, I fully understand. I did one of those grade the trade type stories today after the Waller trade. And I wrote it there too. I fully understand that Raiders fans would hate this grade. I gave them a B for it because I understand the logic. I understand where they're coming from. Now I understand why Raiders fans should and probably do hate the trade because you gave up a very popular player in Darren Waller. And if he does get healthy or play the majority, if not all, of the season next year, he's going to ball out for the Giants. And Raiders fans are going to hate that. And you don't know what that 100th pick is going to turn into right now. But with the way the Raiders are looking at it is you've got Jacoby Myers, who is 26 years old. He's on an ascending arc in his career. He navigates a similar area of the field. Granted, he does it a little differently than Darren Waller because they play a different position. But then you've got Darren Waller, who's sort of probably on the downside of his career, unless he all of a sudden revitalizes himself and can kind of shake the injuries that have cost him 14 games in the last 2 years. And then you throw in the fact that Waller, was probably only guaranteed one more year in Vegas. At minimum, was going to need to do something with his deal a year from now. So there was no certainty that he was going to be there any longer than an extra year. So the Raiders get a guy who is entering his prime. They get the 3rd round pick, and they chose that combination of assets over somebody like Darren Waller, who, again, you look at what the last 2 years have given them, and it hasn't been enough.
Jeff, great stuff as always, man. Hopefully we do this again soon around the draft. Always appreciate catching up with you. And be well, my friend.
Of course. Appreciate you guys having me. Have a good one.
All right. There goes Jeff Howe from The Athletic. He was on the Folsom Lake Honda hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop. Coming up,